7 books philosophers prefer you don't discover. What would you think if I revealed that the most revolutionary philosophical texts are available to everyone? Not hidden in secret academic archives, but accessible in any bookstore, representing a silent threat to the philosophical foundations built over centuries. Have you ever wondered why certain transformative works never appear in philosophy curricula? It's not for lack of intellectual value, but because they constitute a danger to the established philosophical order, capable of destabilizing academic foundations. We will examine 7 works that most professional philosophers would like to keep away from your hands. These are not simply controversial texts, but true intellectual bombs that question the foundations of philosophical thought. By the end of this reading, you will understand why these books generate so much discomfort in the philosophical community and how reading them could permanently transform your perspective of the world. If you've ever sensed that philosophy comprises more than what is shown in university classrooms, this information is particularly relevant to you. First book, The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. What if every philosophical system created, from Plato to Kant and contemporary thinkers, was actually a sophisticated psychological defense mechanism against the fear of our mortality? This is the shocking central premise of Ernest Becker's Pulitzer Prize-winning book. Despite this prestigious recognition, it is rarely discussed in academic departments. The reason? Becker argues that philosophical theories do not primarily seek truth, but aim to manage existential anxiety. According to Becker, human civilization is built on immortality projects, attempts to transcend our biological fate through cultural achievements. These projects, including philosophy, provide the comforting illusion that we can conquer death through ideas and creations. The uncomfortable implication suggests that the great philosophical theories about reality, knowledge, and ethics might be motivated not by a genuine search for truth, but by the desperate need to deny our finitude. Not surprisingly, this book remains philosophy's uncomfortable secret. Second book, Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. What happens when you combine neuroscience, quantum physics, and practical exercises to modify consciousness? The result is Prometheus Rising, a text that most philosophical academics prefer to ignore. Wilson radically asserts that what we call reality actually constitutes a series of tunnels or models constructed by our nervous systems. And these tunnels are neither complete nor particularly accurate. We don't perceive reality, we create it. The truly disturbing aspect is that Wilson not only theorizes about these reality tunnels but offers exercises to abandon them and create new ones. This transforms philosophy from an abstract debate to a direct experimentation with consciousness. Why does this frighten traditional philosophers? Because if Wilson is right, thousands of philosophical articles debating the nature of reality could be meaningless, comparable to discussing whether Batman would win against Superman. They would simply be collisions between different reality tunnels with no possible objective resolution. Third book, The Myth of Mental Illness by Thomas says, what if many psychological conditions we diagnose and treat didn't actually exist as medical entities, but were simply metaphors confused with facts? This is the controversial thesis of psychiatrist Thomas Zez, who argues that by transforming moral and existential problems into diseases, we have created a system that disempowers people and erodes individual responsibility. Philosophers avoid confronting Zez because his work exposes a profound failure of modern philosophy. By ceding questions about human suffering to medical science, philosophy has abandoned one of its essential historical functions. Zez forces philosophers to face how their discipline has retreated from addressing fundamental human concerns. The disturbing possibility raised, what if philosophical problems about human suffering weren't solved by science, but simply relabeled? What if the language of brain chemistry and diagnosis had obscured, rather than resolved, deeper philosophical questions about how to live and create meaning? Fourth book, Finite and Infinite Games by James P. Carse. What if everything you consider serious in life, including philosophical debates, was actually a form of game that you forgot was a game? James Carse's short volume classifies human activity into 2 types. Finite games, played to win, with fixed rules and clear winners, and infinite games, played to continue playing, with changing rules that keep the game alive. The explosive philosophical revelation, what if the history of philosophy was mostly a series of finite games, attempts to have the last word or create the definitive system, while authentic philosophical thinking is really an infinite game that seeks to keep questions open and exploration continuous? Philosophers avoid this book because it suggests that many are playing the wrong game. By treating philosophy as a finite game with winners and losers, They have betrayed its deeper purpose, the infinite game of continuous questioning and wonder. Kars writes, "To be prepared against surprise is to be trained. To be prepared for surprise is to be educated." This simple distinction challenges the entire philosophical academic structure, which frequently trains instead of educates, preparing against surprise rather than for it. Fifth book, The Conspiracy Against the Human Race by Thomas Ligotti. What if optimistic philosophy was not only wrong but actively harmful? A cushion that protects us from facing the true horror of existence? Horror writer Thomas Ligotti presents an argument so dark that most philosophers refuse to consider it. That consciousness itself is a tragic evolutionary accident that has left humans uniquely aware of our insignificance and mortality. Ligotti's pessimism suggests that the entire constructive philosophical enterprise, from virtue ethics to political theory, might be an elaborate form of denial, a way to look away from the genuine horror of conscious existence. The most disturbing aspect is his insinuation that the optimistic philosophies dominant in our universities are not closer to truth, but are simply more comforting psychological sedatives, rather than honest assessments of the human condition. What if philosophy's greatest achievements were actually its greatest deceptions? Sixth book, The Technological Society by Jacques Ellul. Imagine discovering that something you considered a tool serving human purposes, technology, has actually reversed the relationship by transforming humans into its servants. Jacques Ellul's The Technological Society introduces the concept of technique, not just machines, but the totality of methods and processes designed for efficiency. His startling claim is that technique has become autonomous, following its own logic regardless of human values. Why do philosophers avoid this book? Because it suggests that meticulous ethical theories about the proper use of technology are meaningless. According to Ellul, we don't use technology. It uses us, reshaping human life according to its inhuman logic of maximum efficiency. The most threatening aspect of Ellul's analysis is that technological progress is not just altering how we live, but who we are. By adapting to technological requirements, we are transforming ourselves into different kinds of beings, technical beings whose values are configured by the systems we have created. What if philosophy itself had been colonized by technical thinking, becoming more specialized, formalized, and disconnected from real human experience? What if the very methods philosophers employ were manifestations of the technical mentality against which he warns? Seventh book, The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind by Julian Jaynes. What if consciousness as we know it, the internal monologue, the sense of self, the ability to introspect, wasn't a natural evolutionary development, but a cultural invention that emerged just 3,000 years ago? Julian Jaynes argues that before about 1000 BCE, humans operated with a bicameral mind, where one hemisphere generated orders experienced by the other as auditory hallucinations, like the voices of gods. The ancients did not introspect or conceptualize an inner self, but followed these divine mandates. Why is this philosophical dynamite? Because it suggests that consciousness, the very foundation of philosophical inquiry, has a specific history. It's not a universal human condition, but a cultural development that emerged in particular historical circumstances. If consciousness itself has evolved dramatically within recorded history, then philosophical theories that assume a universal conscious experience throughout human history are built on unstable foundations. What if what we call philosophy was just the thinking pattern of a particular configuration of the mind, rather than a universal approach toward truth? Conclusion. So, why are these 7 books so dangerous to the philosophical establishment? Because together they suggest something truly disturbing, that philosophy as practiced in universities might be limited not just in its conclusions, but in its very foundations. Becker reveals philosophical systems as potential mechanisms of death denial. Wilson shows how rational analysis is just a limited reality tunnel. Zez demonstrates how philosophy has abandoned crucial questions about human suffering. Kars exposes how philosophy has become a finite game instead of an infinite one. Ligotti challenges the underlying optimistic bias in most philosophical traditions. Ellul shows how technological thinking has colonized philosophy itself. And Jaynes suggests that the conscious mind that philosophy takes as a starting point has a specific history rather than a universal nature. Together, these forbidden books offer a metacritique not just of specific philosophical theories, but of the entire enterprise as conventionally practiced. They suggest that traditional philosophy might be building elaborate conceptual structures on fundamentally unstable foundations. But here's the positive aspect. By reading these forbidden books, you might discover a different kind of philosophy, one more honest about human limitations, more open to radical possibilities, and more relevant to the genuine challenges of being human. This is why these books deserve your attention, even if, or especially because, professional philosophers would prefer you not to read them. They represent not an abandonment of philosophical thought, but its renewal and expansion. Thank you for your attention.